Hello, everybody. It is Wednesday, October 23rd, and welcome to the Wednesday edition of an archive that typically comes on Monday. I apologize for the delay on that. I had a bit of illness that prevented me from doing the live archive. So instead, I released the archive that would typically come out Wednesday a bit early this week, and am going to go through all of the peer review and feedback for our last composition for the month, the chiptune assignment from week 3. So here we are in the beginning of, here we are in week 4, and you have now completed your 2D platformer and Angry Bots Wise implementation. I have only received a couple of messages overall of any sort of technical issues, so it seems that most people have been successful in getting their music and sound effects working in both of those games. So the assignments this week will be preparing for the final project delivery, creating a series of video captures of your music and sound effects working in the game, and the final project delivery, which is a 10-question test that is built on FSO, but really it's a way for me to gather all of the materials and assets that you have created over the course of the month. So in the second half of our archive today, we will get into the new assignments coming up for week 4. But as always, and here in our last round, we want to do the peer review from the previous week, where in week 3 you also had a chiptune composition. So I have 3 submissions for that. Let's do this. Move that out of the way and bring these up. Actually, let me put all these in the same folder. So we have 3 submissions here, for the chiptune composition. And we're going to take a listen to each one of these. As you know from the delivery from the assignment, you were required to deliver an MP3 file plus a screenshot of your Logic session that contains the chiptune composition. The focus of this assignment was more on taking the composition style and the technology approach all the way back to the original Nintendo system, where you were restricted to the number of channels or the number of simultaneous voices or sounds that could play. You are also restricted to the sound palette of a series of EXS24 sound banks that contain all of the sounds sampled from the original Nintendo system plus the Famicom system, which was the NES release over in Japan. So these EXS24 sound banks gave you a wide palette of different types of sounds that were very reminiscent of these early kind of chiptune simple waveform effects and oscillators really, to create a composition that was reminiscent of a particular style or a particular game of that era. So as we are talking about in week 3, all of the technology that is currently available in the game industry as a whole, talking about tools like audio middleware, Wise and Fmod, talking about game engines like the Unreal game engine and the Unity game engine. That is where technology for game audio is now, but we throw you all the way back to get a sense of how far we've come in all of this technology, talking about the original Nintendo system and how a lot of that very nostalgic and reminiscent kind of sounds and music was made. So operating within these restrictions, let's see here. We have 4 simultaneous channels that could be used. Let's see if there's any more here. So you could use more than four channels in your overall session, but the main restriction was you were limited to four sounds for voices, if you want to think about it that way, or even channels, depending on how you think about it, versus the synthesizer and your DAW session. But overall, four sounds at any one time. So you can have as many tracks as you want. Just only four sounds could be playing. Now, there were some restrictions that we don't follow, and this is where it gets a bit different between channels and voices. The original Nintendo could only play one voice per channel at a time, which meant everything was monophonic. But we did not follow that restriction. You could use chords. You could use more than one drum sound at the same time. Like drums just count as one voice. Chords could just count as one voice per instrument. So no more than four at any one time. So if you kind of look over this at any time, and if drums, where drums, kick, percussion, count as one, then you could use more channels simultaneously as long as only four voices at any one time. So those are the overall approaches, or those are the main restrictions: the sound palette and how many simultaneous sounds. The sounds are so kind of sterile and simple, and they are either made up of square waves or triangle waves, or there are probably a few sine waves in there, although the original Nintendo, I don't know how true they were in the original sample pack. But mostly square waves, square waves, triangle waves, and a noise channel for the percussion and drums. So with those kind of simple sounds overall, it really makes the composition focus on the melody, the harmony, the rhythm, the development of the music. Typically, you want to stay away from more of a song structure where there is an intro, something like you start out with a bass line, and then the drums come in, and then the harmonic pads come in, and then the melody line comes in, and you have something that's like a verse and a chorus and a breakdown and intros and outros and all those sorts of things that don't really work for a demo or a portfolio piece, where if you would like if you were showing this off, you would like a game developer to be able to pull out certain sections from minute to minute or from bar to bar and say these sections could work for a menu, or these number of bars over here could work for an action scene, and this could be a level, and this could be underground, and whatever the different aspects of the music are, you could pull out different sections in more of a demo or portfolio piece. So you would want to hit the most interesting parts as quickly as possible, start out at the peak and then kind of drop down a little bit and then come back for a strong finish, as opposed to more song structure where you start out with an intro and build and build and build till you get to a verse and then chorus and then breakdown and start and an end. So hit them very hard, very quickly with the best part of your music. And so the song structure, the instrumentation, other fun things with these sounds are, since it's very simple waveforms, bass works very nicely. It depends on if you were listening to it through your headphones or through, if you're listening to it through earbuds or massive speakers or home stereo, whatever. Typically, the low synths, or like lower octaves of a square wave or triangle wave work very well for bass. Putting an arpeggiator before a synth and setting it to 16ths, 32nds, 64ths, and sweeping up and down, arpeggiating quickly through a chord works very, very well also. Or putting an arpeggiator before the line while you're writing it, so it's re-triggering the note very quickly while you're melodically playing along. All that stuff is very fun and works very well for these types of sounds. Other things, it did not need to be interactive. It did not need to loop. This is more of a portfolio piece, something to show off a variety of approaches with your music. So we're going to take a listen to, well, we're going to open up the screenshot of each one of these and then bring up the music and follow along. Typically, I suggest thinking about a particular piece of music or game as you are composing these. And I will come up with my own suggestion, and you can play along at home. And always try to see if it kind of matches up with the original intent. Sometimes it doesn't come from any particular style of game or previous game project, but it's always interesting to kind of figure out which direction it's leading. What else? All right, so we have 4 tracks here. Let's go ahead and bring up. Oops. Bring up the QuickTime player to play it. See if I can make all this fit. All right, that should work. Hold on a sec. I think that's not actually being recorded. Hold on. Let's try this. Check. Okay. And play this. There we go. All right, that looks better. Let's start over again. Here we go. Seems like it is set up to loop. I would put an ending on it, just so you have a strong resolution to it. I like the pace of it, I like the energy. Feels like it could be some sort of action. I don't know if I picture kind of like a street fighting action game, or maybe some sort of like spaceship flying or racing game. Something with a faster pace. It's not, doesn't feel like a fantasy or some sort of like a game based in a far off time, but it feels more sort of modern and yeah, that kind of strong movement through all the way through. I think that really just comes from the steadiness of the drums. One thing I would point out, just visually watching it as it goes along, you can see the structure of kind of the repetition through it, and I think that it works all the way through the first pass, but you should definitely start changing things up a bit more through the first half and the second half. So let's see if I can. The fact, yeah, that it can just kind of jump to the same sections in the first part and the second part, and it feels very much the same. So it's a good time to create more movement, to create more change. Again, they could say, okay, this would be a good part for the intro of the level, and then this is where the player is hurt a bit more, and then over here is when the boss comes out, and you can kind of, instead of making this one big loop that could work for a level, that would come kind of later on. But as a demo piece, you would like to have as kind of strong changes as you can as you progress through the piece. Probably that would include stronger changes to the rhythmic pattern. I think you could do more of that. What you're doing melodically through this first part works very well, and you can just kind of continue to develop it further through the second part. All right, I think that everything works, and then I think it works very well that you just directly start into this pace overall, but definitely create an ending, give a little reward if they actually make it all the way through and listen to it, so they have a strong finale. You don't need to make it loop at this point as a demo. Very good. All right. Good use of the instrumentation. Let's try bring this up. And so I find a lot of folks that work on the project, either they find the instrumentation fun and nostalgic and kind of liberating because the sounds are so basic and simple. It forces them and allows them to think more directly about melody and harmony and rhythm. I also find other folks that feel very restricted by the sounds, where the sounds are so simple that it takes all the cool toys and effects and tips and tricks that you get with all the other variety of presets and synths that you get in Logic. So one way to approach this type of composition beyond the scope of this assignment, one way to take it even further, build it even as a better demo project, would be to, at some point halfway through the composition, take all of the restrictions off, take the handcuffs off, and let the composition go with all of your resources and all of your number of tracks and any synths and any instrumentation that you want. Basically stating a strong melodic theme or rhythmic idea in the first part, and the composition blossoms and loses all restrictions in the second part. To basically say that with all the restrictions in game audio going all the way back to, let's say, the original Nintendo, with only a limitation of 4 simultaneous voices and very simple sounds, I can still create very strong, catchy, melodic, memorable themes. But if we had no restrictions and as many tracks and all the synths and all the sample libraries and go to full orchestral instrumentation, then it just kind of morphs and changes into the new piece, saying, but it also could be this. It could be this advanced and this complex or this strong overall. To kind of show the same thematic lines thread between even simple instrumentation all the way to full instrumentation. So other ways to consider using these sounds and this type of composition, and you can do that for whatever style, whether it's directly for games or if you just want to use that as a kind of a production track overall. All right, I think we are set up with this one. Let's go ahead and give it a listen. with the arrangement overall, I would again suggest leaving off this kind of intro, this kind of build up where the drums drop in. All right, so then we have a melodic line that comes. Track 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so it's gotta kind of figure out maybe the drums are this one. All right, so this is where I would start. Now you had a kind of strong melody through here. You could probably start with the drums here and just go to the most energy, the most excitement in the beginning of the composition. So you don't want somebody to kind of wait for it. Just kind of hit them real hard with the best part and then break it down and build it back up. There is one of the synths, if not more of the synths, feels strongly detuned, or maybe there's like a pitch warble to it, where it kind of blurs against out of tune or dissonant. The repetition helps kind of get away from that, or you kind of get used to it. But I like what the melody is doing, or like the rhythmic kind of. And the instrument that feels more melodic should probably be in a higher octave to kind of stick out a bit more. The arpeggio, which I guess is this line right here, feels like it goes up higher. Maybe it's just the fact that the sound is very round overall, doesn't have very many high frequencies, but it feels like the arpeggio goes higher than the melodic line. Well, I mean, it does go up there a bit more, but that higher octave, or maybe even just a brighter sound to make it stick out, create more changes rhythmically. I mean, the drums are doing some interesting things, but it feels more like a beat than like a thematic line for different parts of a game, where maybe you introduce the character, you introduce the level, you introduce what action sounds like, and exploration, and stealth, and danger, and different thematic ideas, more than starting out with the bass, the drums come in, melodic line comes in, and then the beat kind of builds and recedes down. So I think there's definitely some usable elements. The instrumentation works. Watch out for that kind of detuned feel all the way through, because it clashes against the really solid ones that are perfectly on pitch against that sort of detuned effect, detuned feel, I guess. Oh, let's think about the games. There's definitely a dark minor feel. It's not really, whatever's going on is not too happy. It's feels more like could be like a level as you're kind of walking around. It feels maybe like an exploration. The kind of halftime feel of the rhythm doesn't really make it feel like action, although the snare is moving around quite a bit. So, like going to this a double time feel against that halftime feel, kind of go up to 4/4 and just kind of go to regular time versus halftime or double time. Then you can play with different pacing and step things up or down, and use different rhythmic instruments or melodic instruments to move against those, because there's some cool things that you're doing like that. Those kind of triplet feels on the melodic line, playing with the different rhythmic feel versus just staying at 1, 2, 3, 4. Staying at that halftime feel all the way through can give you a lot more room to operate between. Right. Let's see. Let's try one more here. Bring this up. that. And an MP3 here. All right, let's take a listen. Very cool. All right. I like the changes throughout. I think the use of the instrumentation works very, very well. Let's see. Let's bring it over here. So we have a kind of a strong melody harmonic relationship, and then we get this new instrumentation that's added in and a much higher register overall. Kind of works as different instrument sections. You could feel elements that feel almost like strings or flutes. Obviously the percussion. And so one thing I would say, again, with the structure, hit them with this strong melody and harmony. Just start with this part right here. Because you build and change from there. So I would start here and then bring in this kind of lower energy level at kind of the midpoint. And you really don't need to take this long to break down and build back up. And then kick back into the changes, just the modulation of all that. I would probably avoid this really kind of repetitive bass drum through there, because it's really it doesn't give it time to end. It's just this constant buildup of low energy. You might do that with the bass lines that you have. I don't know if you could just cut those down into staccato, I don't know, whatever you're doing there. What are those, 16th notes? Just in that kind of rapid fire, try that with a bass instead. Or maybe it's just the bass drum hit, because over here, or is that the same bass drum? Right, it has so much more definition. It goes boom, it has a little drop to it, and you have a lot more of that noise. But there, it kind of just starts jumbling together. So those would be elements to consider melodically and harmonically. You have some strong changes all the way through. I probably wouldn't put a fade on it. I would just end it on a strong resolution to the tonic. Where does it go? All right. You can just end on this last bass note right there. Boom. And just stop it there, and you don't have to fade it out. And what other things can I identify there? There could be a question as to where somebody is listening to this, as to how piercing, when you get down to just individual instruments that are at that high piercing octaves in there without anything to balance it, and if they're listening on earbuds or headphones or through speakers, you can get piercing overall. So definitely something to consider with these very pure wave, very high octave tones. So I think these work well as they're balanced against each other, because your ear can hold on to that sort of melodic phrase while you have all that arpeggio stuff going up on top, which is definitely fun. Yeah, I think that's a lot of the things that I hear overall. These are the ones I have to go through. So let's count these as one. Okay, I see what. They're all color-coded. So we'll count these as one. These are the same sound at different octaves. Maybe that's what I'm seeing here. And the melodic line and the bass line. So, all right, I think that works out very well. Good job overall with the chiptune compositions. We can see that this works as a solid approach for understanding the original limitations and restrictions and kind of how far we've come. Now that you have started working with Wise and implementing your music and sound effects, you can see the stages and differences between recording and composing and producing your music, then bouncing and formatting it to a proper specification to be able to then put the files into the game, using Wise and implementing and setting things up and mixing and testing everything. More than likely, when you got your music working in the game, it revealed some sort of tweaks or changes or issues with the music or sound effects that you needed to go back into your DAW, make some changes, bounce the files out again, and test it all over again. You really get a full sense of how your music and sound effects work once you get it into the game. And so hopefully everybody has successfully gotten everything working and setting up. And this last week is about addressing any sort of final technical challenges or creative challenges with your projects. We want to make sure everything is working and set up, and you have the best versions of your music and sound effects. Any sort of revisions or changes that you've done should definitely be implemented into Wise and into the game so that you can get that the best version of your music and sound effects into the final video captures and delivered with your final project. So make sure you take the time early this week to go through all of the projects to see what is required, and reach out if you have any sort of questions. Any sort want to go over anything or wrap up anything before the end of the month. Now is the time to make sure that everything is taken care of, so you can end this month strong and go directly into hopefully your final project next month. So let me know if you have any questions or want to talk about anything beyond the class. Always stay in touch. I'm always interested in where you guys are headed beyond the class and certainly beyond Full Sail. So let me know. Other than that, we're going to turn it over to the archive to discuss the new assignments for week 4. Thank you very much. All right, so we have our submissions there. Like I said, the focus of this week is your final week is to take the information and the projects that you've worked on and put them in the best light to show them off beyond beyond the class and beyond your time at Full Sail, and be able to show the work off that you've done and completed, hopefully to future employers and future clients and whatnot. So as you have been progressing through all of your classes, you certainly should be gathering together as much of your classwork and materials and projects that you've been working on and put it together into a strong demo reel to show that off. And that includes these game projects. They are well and good as grades and as projects for a class, but their real intention is to give you a vehicle to show off your music and to show off your work and be able to demonstrate that off out there as you get started in the industry. So we are going to talk about the best way of showing off your music that is intended to play back in the game is to actually have somebody play the game. The best way of demonstrating your music for a game is to actually demo that game. So you have the game projects, you have the game applications, and you can distribute those as you wish. They are yours. They are free for you, free for educational purposes, free for demo purposes. The only thing is you just you would indicate that you did all of the music and sound, but you don't claim that you created the game. But they are for you to put on a website, put it in Dropbox, and send it around to future clients or future employers, and to show off your work. However, there are some limitations, mostly like technical limitations, with demonstrating your game. The first one is it's a Mac game, and so whoever wants to play the game needs to have a Mac computer in order to play it. The games can be put in or made as PC games, but that takes a lot of extra understanding and programming to convert the projects. I mean, it is possible, but mostly you have a Mac application. And so somebody has to have a Mac, and maybe whoever you're sending this off to has a computer and they can check it out. They have to have a computer powerful enough to play the games. That isn't as much of an issue as it used to be, as people's computers have progressively gotten better over the years and have started with better computers. We really don't have much of an issue running these projects. So then you have another issue of very smart people on the internet won't probably just download some random application and run it on their computer. You would be very smart not to just download random zip files and open them up and play them on your computer. Now, of course, that's not the case with these applications, and they aren't. I mean, there's nothing wrong with them, but just a random link on a website, you're not going to get tons of people just saying, "Okay, sure, I'm just going to download this unknown application and run it." So you need to have some way of showing off your work. You need to have some way of people being able to see your music working in a game. You could just take like one of your main loop files and put it up on SoundCloud and say, "Hey, here's a loop that I wrote for a game, and I promise it works in the game." So the best way of showing off your music working in the game is actually having the game to show off. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a video capture of you playing the game with your music and sound effects working. So by this point in the month, you have composed the music for both of these projects, created all the sound effects, We had an opportunity for peer review, and you also got feedback for your submission. You have the opportunity to do any revisions or changes to that composition or those sound effects. Last week you used Wise and used an audio middleware tool to connect your music and your sound effects working in the game. You got it working in the game. You tested it out. You played the game, and you listened to your sound effects and your music, and more than likely found some issues with it. I mean, I guess you could knock it out of the park first time every single time, but most of the time you get it in the game, and there's I don't know, 75, 80% of it's all right, but there's another 20% there that I need to tweak and to change. So you go back to your sounds and you tweak your sounds a little bit. You go back to your music and you mix your files and you bounce everything out again. And you test it, put it back in the game, test it out. And that is a very constant kind of revision or iteration cycle where you compose something, you say, I think this is going to work. You put it in the game, go, man, that kind of works, but I need to do this. Then you go back and you fix it, you put it back in the game, you test it out, and you go around and around. So once you get everything set up in the game, then now you're ready to do this final video capture. It basically proves the process that you have created all the music and sound effects, put it in the game, tested it out, and have something to show for it. So you will be using QuickTime and a program called Loopback in order to capture the video on the screen or the game on the screen. All right, so let me talk about how you will set this up and how this will actually work. So actually I can just do this real quick. When you go on FSO, here's week 4. Here's your final game captures assignment. Notice that it is 0 weighted. That doesn't mean that you don't have to do it. It's just not turned in here. You are going to turn it down here in the final project delivery. So don't just ignore the assignment because it is 0 weighted. But it provides you with all the material. It says you will submit this YouTube link in a separate assignment on FSO. Final game capture. So you'll get a PDF here, and you'll get a PDF here. And the first one just gives you mostly just an overview and delivery instructions. Just kind of a real quick summary of how it all works and how to deliver everything here. But there's a separate PDF that goes slide by slide and goes into a lot more detail. So let me just take a look at this here. You will use QuickTime, which is already installed on your computer, and a program called Loopback in order to capture audio inside of your computer. Loopback is a free application. You can just go to the link here. Well, it's not a free application. It costs $99, but you don't need the $99 version. I don't know, unless you completely love the application and you want to support these people, but really you just need the free download for our purposes. The limitation with the free download is that it lasts for 15 minutes, and you only need to record for a minute or two. So if for some reason the 15 minutes runs out, then you just shut down the program and open it back up, and you got another 15 minutes. But after a while, it starts blasting white noise at you, so make sure if you hear that, that's what's going on there. So you just download the Loopback, and what it is it is a virtual audio cable application for your computer. Meaning, you are going to record the video using QuickTime. You've probably used QuickTime at some point. This is actually QuickTime down here for all my videos. QuickTime is just capture the video from your webcam, or actually in this instance it's going to capture the actual screen, but QuickTime doesn't allow you to do audio from inside of your computer. Actually, here's a better view of it. This is what it looks like when you open up and do the screen recording. And when you hit this down arrow, it doesn't allow you to record from inside of your own computer because of all sorts of nefarious copyright reasons. They don't want you recording everything that's ever been played through your entire computer. But for our purposes, it's your music. You want to record it, so you need to have a way of actually doing that. That's where Loopback comes in. And when you download Loopback and you run it, it looks like this. Here. And it says, hey, click here to create a new virtual device. And when you create a new virtual device, it's actually creating like an audio interface inside of your computer. Just like you take a cable and you go a cable out of a guitar into an amp, or just a cable out of one thing into another. This takes a cable, a virtual cable, and goes out of your game into QuickTime. If I look at my audio MIDI setup now, it actually adds an extra interface to run everything through. And when you do that and you go back to QuickTime, oh my goodness. Hello, computer. There it goes. When you come back here and look in here, you should now have a loopback audio interface. Once you do all of that, the other thing you need to do is come in here and you need to tell it to actually what application do you want to record. And you want it to point to 2D Platformer or Angry Bots, whichever one you're recording. Right here. And when you do that, it shows up here. You will be able to, I don't want to do this right now, but you want to be able to listen through your speakers. You uncheck the mute audio sources so that you can hear everything. And then you go run the game, and you should be able to meter it. Once you play the game, you should see some meters here inside of the screen recording, and you know at that point that it's working. When you get this set up, you might hear it doubled up, like it might monitor back twice. Depends on how you have your audio set up, but it either can be this, it could be monitoring through QuickTime, which could be this fader. It could be this setting, monitor through audio through whatever your output is. So double check those just to make sure. The other thing is, if you hear it doubled, it doesn't actually capture doubled. So you can just hit record anyway. You'll monitor it doubled, and then you'll listen. The video will be fine. So just a couple of pointers there. So you'll install Loopback. You'll set up for the screen recording. Like I said, you'll create a new virtual device. You'll select the game application that you want to run. You check the checkboxes. You open up QuickTime. You set up a new screen recording. I showed you this where you click the little arrow and you want to set up to Loopback so that you can record inside of QuickTime. At that point, you should see meters. And you can hit record. Depends on if you have like two screens set up. If you're just recording on your one screen, you can either click and drag just a portion of your screen if it's in a window, or you can just click and it will record the entire screen. Depends on how you have it set up. The only thing to watch out for is most of everybody's computers now have Retina displays, and that's like a really super high resolution. And if you do the entire full screen, it might just slow everything down trying to capture all that stuff. It just might be something to watch out for. I got a couple more slides on that. So the best thing to do is run it in a window and just kind of highlight over the window so that it only captures. You don't capture all of your messy desktop and all this extra stuff. You just capture exactly what you want. So it starts the screen capture. You can run like I said, you can run it in a window. If you click this little checkbox, it says it's in a window. If you unclick this checkbox, it says it's not in a window. More than likely, you've played the game up to this point. You probably know how best it is to run. You've probably already set all this stuff, if you even had to mess with it at all. So more than likely, it's just fine. But if things start acting screwy while trying to do the recording, some of these settings can help. So you hit record when you're ready to go, and you start recording and demonstrating the game. The actual content of the video, I leave that very much up to you. It's your demo video. It's what you want to show off and how you want to show it off. What I'm most concerned with, most focused on, is the process. The fact that you have the game, you have the music and sound effects working in the game. That's a huge portion of the project that you're now demonstrating. And you also have QuickTime, and you've got Loopback or something installed. I guess I should also point out, if you already have and you use something like Soundflower or Audio Hijack, those things are identical to Loopback, or at least in our function, for what we need. And so you can use those pieces of software, as long as it doesn't watermark it or do anything weird with the video or audio. If you already have it set up in a certain way, you can use that. But once you've captured this video, you show that you have all of the sound effects and music working in the game, and you can do a video capture. You have the game playing back. You're using QuickTime and something like Loopback to capture the audio. And so if later on you have a different project or different sounds, you want to redo this one, you can always just create new video captures to show the work that you've done. Demonstrate all the music and sound design. The other thing to point out is I do not count every single sound effect, meaning that I don't track that you have triggered every single sound effect in every piece of music, because I know that a lot of it, or some of it, is left up to chance. You can't always trigger every single music file because it's random. So you're going to get 3 intros, 3 main loops, and only 2 of the endings will play within about 2 minutes long. We suggest that the videos be around 1 minute to 2 minutes long, which is right here. Oops. Right. Oh, there it is. Video capture should be no longer than 2 minutes. So again, the content is up to you. How you demonstrate it is up to you. I would suggest a big one is don't play the game like you're trying to win the game. Don't just do the video capture just to show off how good you are at playing the game. It's about showing off all of the sounds. One common thing that I'll see especially with 2D platformer, is I'll hear the intro and then they'll start playing the game, and for a minute or two I'll just see them play the game, and they'll never die, or they'll just die once at the end and stop the video, and that means I only saw 1 intro and 1 ending. You created 4 other files and never showed anybody. So die a couple of times, jump off the edge, trigger some of those ending cues, try to trigger as many of the sound effects as possible, and just show it off in its best light overall. Then you stop the screen recording. You save the screen recording, name it your last name, your first name, GCP Week4 2D platformer, whatever or Angry Bots. Do not name it last name, first name. Your name isn't last name, first name. You have a last name. You have a first name. Please, it happens every month. Somebody at some point names something last name, first name. So just watch out for that. And then please, please, please check your screen recording. Watch the video after it's done. This happens. Most people do this, no problem. But for some reason, I will always, every month, I'll get a series of videos that either the audio is just missing, or they used the internal microphone on their computer it played out of their computer speakers and then back into the internal microphone. And if it didn't feed back, then it sounds horrible. It just sounds really thin, and you hear them in the background, like breathing and clicking on their keyboard, and it's really kind of weird. And you hear their dog barking in the background and their family running around or whatever it is. So just watch out for that. Double check the video. Make sure it has the correct content of it. It has the correct thing that you captured. The other thing is don't hit record and record it for 2 minutes the first time, because there's no telling if you got it right the first time. So just hit record for a few seconds, and then stop it and check the recording and make sure you're actually capturing the thing you think you're recording. So you don't have to do it over and over again and waste any time. A couple optional tips. Clear off the desktop. If you are capturing any aspect of the desktop, it's probably best to just make it as clear as possible. I know a lot of folks, we have audio directors and people in different game teams come and talk to our Full Sail student, or come talk to our students, and they'll say often, if we see screenshots or things and it just looks like you have a messy desktop and you posted up a video and it just looks like things are all over the place, it's not probably going to help your cause overall, because a lot of people don't want to work with that. You can either do a full screen or a high resolution recording. You can do a low resolution recording. If more than likely the video capture is just going to work just fine. Every once in a while, depending on people's computers and whatever they're running or how they have it set up, this might start making your computer chug a little bit, because you got to play the game and do a video capture at the same time. If that is the case, then as long as the audio doesn't stutter or doesn't drop out, if the video kind of gets slow or choppy, that's fine. For the purposes of the video, for the grade and for the assignment, that's fine. Obviously, you want to make as a high quality video as possible. I wouldn't really even consider just focusing on the fact that it's an assignment. Create a proper and a demo video that you can use beyond the class. So if need be, try shrinking down the resolution of the game. Maybe even try shrinking down the resolution of your monitor and your screen. That might help create smoother videos overall. Once you have done the video for both Angry Bots and 2D Platformer, you're going to post them up on YouTube. Just to put them up there, you can put it just so that I can view it. You don't have to make it completely public, but don't make it private. Make sure that you post it up and you can share the link and have everybody reference it. So the assignment of video capture is really getting everything set up. Once it's working, then it's just playing the game and just showing off how your music and sound effects sound in the game. All right, so that is your final video capture. And to then show it off, or then to kind of deliver the final version of everything back here on FSO. The kind of big assignment for this week is your final project delivery. And this is going to be basically, it's a 10-question test, but it's not like a test that you study for because you have all the answers. It's just really a summary of your composition. So it's broken down into two halves. 5 of the questions are for 2D Platformer, 5 of the questions for Angry Bots. They're very similar to each other. The first one is 2D Platformer video capture. Provide the YouTube link to your 2D Platformer game capture video. So you just did the video capture, you uploaded it to YouTube, now post the YouTube link here. Make sure that it works. You can always go into incognito mode to check links. That's how I do a lot of my stuff with YouTube and Google, since I have like a personal login for YouTube and Google, but whenever I want to do any Full Sail stuff, you just go into incognito mode and it forgets who you are, and then you can log in as whatever you want. So if you just double check all the links that you're going to send me, make sure that they work. You can use incognito mode to do that, or send them to somebody else, and then that's how I will be able to check it also. So give me a YouTube link. This is actually quite important. A missing YouTube link or a missing audio track in a video renders the submission ungradable. If I can't hear it, if I can't hear your music and your sound effects, or the video doesn't work, or the link doesn't work, I can't grade the rest of the assignment. So make sure the video is there and working. Then you'll send me a screenshot of your DAW session. You will, this is the 2D platformer instrumentation. List the instruments that you used in the intros, main loop, and ending cues. Name any synths or sample library sources for all the tracks. So you will tell me what instruments you used. Tell me in the intros, the main loops, and the endings, which synths, which drums. Don't just tell me I used a piano and I used a banjo and an organ and a synthesizer. Tell me which presets, which sample libraries, which synthesizers you used, which presets you used, so that the idea is if somebody else had to recreate this session, they knew what instruments. They could go load up those, assuming that they had the same instrumentation that you did. Somebody could kind of recreate all of this stuff if necessary. Next, 2D platformer transitions. You will take screenshots of your intros, your main loops, and your endings, and then line them up in a particular way. You are going to take your intro 1 and connect it to main loop 2, and then connect it to ending 3. And then take intro 2 and connect it to main loop 3, and then go to ending 1. And then take intro 3 and go to main loop 1, and go to ending 2. I guess I could just read it up here. Basically, it's taking all of your tracks and rearranging them into different orders, taking a screenshot of it, and then answering a few questions, like describe what you listen to each track. How does the music transition from one cue to the next? Describe what you hear. Does the intensity of the music build with the intro cue? Are the same instruments heard from the intros through the main loops and the endings? Are there any hiccups or pops as the music shifts from one music cue to the next? So these are just basic overview. How well did it work? Did it sound as you expected? Just kind of give me insight into the final product. Then you will create a screenshot of your final mix. Give me a peak level and an RMS level. Use the level meter plugin found in Logic, just so I can get an overview of your levels. AngryBots section is very much very similar. AngryBots video capture. Provide the YouTube link for that. Give me a screenshot of your AngryBots session. And list the instrumentation used in your ambient, buzzer action, mech action, and spider action cues. Then you'll take your 4 files, line them all up together, ambient, buzzer action, mech action, spider action, and then basically comment the same way. How did it work? Listen to your cues playing back together. Describe what you hear. How well did the cues play back? Are there any noticeable issues? Do the cues start and end at the same time? Are there any rhythms that clash? Do the melodies or harmonies clash? Just to get an overview of how well the main portion of the composition worked. Give me a summary with a screenshot of your AngryBots mix. So really, it's just kind of like a post-mortem overview, summary, summation of how well everything worked in the final projects. So that is the direction we are headed in this last week. Please let me know if you have any questions. going to stick around here for a few minutes if you have any questions. But again, this is the last week. Let me know if you are having any challenges or anything that you need to discuss in the final part of the week. But we have one more class on Thursday. We can listen to or discuss or anything that you need, or take a look at your final video. But other than that, let's end it there. Thank you very much, and I'll see you again on Thursday.